Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new video here on the View from the Crowd YouTube channel, and today we are going to be previewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, while I enjoyed both the Austrian and the Styrian Grand Prix, it did get a little repetitive, especially sort of the back end of last weekend. I didn't even bother watching free practice. There was no point. It was just more or less expecting what was going to happen, after the race. We already had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen and how the race was going to play out this last weekend, which did make it a bit boring. We kind of hoped that the rain would, shape things up a bit, but by the end of the race, everything had kind of gone back to normal. Now, this week, we have a whole new track that brings a whole new lot of potential issues and whole new challenges to this year's F1 grid. So, to start off the season, we've had back-to-back races in, at Spielberg, which is, a very quick track, long straight, not much downforce needed. Now we got to Hungary, a high downforce track, very difficult to overtake. To get even more opposite, you'd have to go to Monaco, really. But Hungary's just sort of in between, and this could potentially throw up some interesting results. Now I'm going to try my hardest to sort of preview this track. It is kind of difficult because usually by now we've been to Monaco and we have a kind of good idea of which cars are strong at high downforce and which ones are not. Of course, I'm going to start with the team that are usually very, very good around high downforce tracks and tend to build their car around them, and that is Red Bull. Now, the Austrian and the Styrian Grand Prix were all right races for Red Bull. They weren't terrible, and they were pretty on the pace with Mercedes, but that Mercedes is just another level of good, and it is absolutely crazy how just quick that car is. But now, where top speed doesn't matter so much, that Honda engine isn't losing too much of an advantage, we could really see Red Bull, claw back some decent results against Mercedes. Of course, last year Max Verstappen got pole. He wasn't able to convert it. It was a brilliant strategy by Mercedes, but arguably you could say that Red Bull was the faster car there last year. And, we've seen, Mercedes do very well this year, but this is going back to, that high downforce policy which, Red Bull have had since Adrian Newey came along, and expect them to do very well here. Of course, a big concern could be actually around Alex Albon. He was way off his teammate in Austria and Styria. He wasn't really near Max for his little running in the first race, but even less so in the second one. It could be an interesting weekend for Alex Albon. I expect him to do very well around here given the car that he's got. But we also know that Max is also very good around this track, so he's going to have to really challenge Max this weekend, get some good points to really show that he can be a bit, better, and he can sort of keep up that bit more to Max. Now on to our German overlords, Mercedes. Now, expect Mercedes still to be incredibly competitive. Their car is quite clearly best, the fastest on the grid, like it has been since 2014. So there's absolutely no writing them out of this race. Hamilton goes very well in Hungary. He's won there many times, got many poles there. So, it could look like Mercedes could be winners once again. Now for Valtteri Bottas, he's had some very iffy races around Hungary, often driving into other people, which has never sort of bode well for him, but he's going to need a stronger result. Hamilton bounced back amazingly well at the last race, and he's going to keep that momentum rolling into this week. Bottas needs to make sure to step up his game and really, challenge Lewis if he's got any hope of, hanging on to his championship lead and potentially winning this championship. Now on to Ferrari. Now, they say they're bringing a big upgrade package to this race, and boy, do they need it. They look horrendously off the pace. Their engine is down on power. In the search of more downforce, they've chucked a load of drag on that car. So things are not looking too brilliant, but one thing you can't doubt is actually how much downforce that car has. It is very quick through the corners. Even in Austria, we could see that it was very quick in the sort of the tighter sections and the sort of the the high speed corners. It had a tremendous amount of downforce, and with Hungary being a high downforce track, you'd expect it to do well. However, we did see in the wet qualifying session, where downforce is really key, that they just again were just completely off the pace. Qualified 10th and 11th. They need to make sure, at very minimum this weekend, that they get in both cars into Q3 and not be 9th and 10th. They need to be, at least beating the Racing Points and the McLarens. That is where they really need to be this weekend, and it is going to take a tremendous effort with all these upgrades to make sure that that happens. Of course, speaking of Racing Point and McLaren, those two cars are very hard to sort of separate at the moment. We've seen how Racing Point absolutely dominate in terms of race pace, but in terms of raw one-lap pace, that McLaren is a beast, and we've seen it both in qualifying and with Lando Norris in the last two races putting out absolutely stonking lap times to claim, and climb these places. It is a tremendous effort by Lando and Carlos just to see how much they're really pushing that car to make sure that they get absolutely everything out of it. Of course, as I said at the very start of this video, this track poses new challenges, new everything for the drivers this year to see what these machines are capable of, and it will be very interesting to see how Racing Point, if they have really copied the ethos of the W10 last year. That car did have tremendous amount of downforce and went very well in Hungary, so if they have been able to sort of crack that, then they should also be very quick here. But we're yet to see how the McLaren package really deals with high downforce. We haven't really seen it much in testing or the race. We did see Carlos Sainz do amazingly in the rain to get third place. Could that be a big factor? Of course, only time will tell. Now one team that seems to be just slightly lagging behind this sort of midfield battle is Renault. Over the last 2 weekends, they've had two cooling problems, one with Daniel Ricciardo in the first race and Esteban Ocon in the last race. Their race pace was looking good. Daniel and Esteban were looking good in terms of race pace last week, but they seem to just chew through the tyres a little bit, and they just seem to sort of completely drop off, as we saw Ricciardo do last weekend. It just completely fell victim to Lance Stroll and Lando Norris. So with it being high downforce, a bit more testier on the tyres, it will certainly be interesting to see how Renault deal with this. Now heading a bit further back, let's talk about the two Ferrari-powered sort of almost backmarkers at this point, Haas and Alfa Romeo. Now Haas have had a terrible time at the moment, running almost last in the last two races. They've really struggled with their car and brake issues, and now we're going to a track with a lot more heavy braking points, a lot more use of the brakes. Let's just hope their brake-by-wire system can actually keep up, and let's not see any horrendous brake failures this weekend. And then on to Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo just don't really have much pace at the moment. They've sort of been there about in the points. Antonio Giovinazzi did get a great result in the first race, and Kimi did seem to get some good race pace out of that car, but it just, in terms of sort of scoring any real points, they're going to really hope for some DNFs further up the field, because that top 10 now is so tightly compact. You do now have established top two teams, Mercedes and Red Bull, who, I don't see them scoring outside the points this season. Their cars are just too good. Then you've got Racing Point, an amazing car, got a lot of race pace. They're going to be always up there. McLaren, again, always up there. Ferrari, they're lagging behind, but they're still sort of there and thereabouts in the points. They may not have the great raw pace, but as we saw from Charles Leclerc in the Austrian Grand Prix, they do have some, fairly decent race pace. We've yet to really see it from Sebastian Vettel, but it could be a time for him to really show that how much pace that Ferrari has. And there you go. There's already 5 teams locking out the top 10. Renault are going to occasionally find themselves in there, but for the likes of Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, and Williams, they're really, really going to struggle to get in that top 10. And with the Hungaroring being a more difficult track to overtake, the problem just gets 10 times worse. Like I said, I'm not really expecting much from AlphaTauri this weekend. Their car does seem to have some decent pace, but poor tyre choice really cost them last weekend. Gasly was not doing well at all on those hard tyres, and yeah, it was a pretty bad strategy call. If Gasly can still, continue to perform and do well in that AlphaTauri, I don't see him, being too far out of the race for sort of that back end of points, but it would take a mighty qualifying and then maybe a bit of parking the car in the middle of the road just to see AlphaTauri get any points this weekend. Now finally on to Williams. We know still that Williams are the slowest team on the grid and points are going to seem very, very unlikely. But if you cast your minds back 12 months ago, George Russell had a phenomenal qualifying. He almost got into Q2, and with this Williams being much more competitive than last season's, there is a good chance that we could see George Russell challenge for Q2 2 races in a row. Nicholas Latifi, his goal will just to beat George. News come out recently, both George Russell and Nicholas Latifi have both signed contracts for Williams in 2021. So at least he's now got that, security in his drive, and he's not having to completely drive for his life. So maybe he might take a few more risks, just really try and show what pace he has, and really try and get, his Williams that bit further off the grid. Maybe not qualifying last, and then pushing on in the race a bit will be a good result for him. So yeah, guys, there's not really much to speak about because there's not much we really know. Shutting down sort of 5 races later when we get to like a track like Monza or Spa, I think I'll have a much greater idea, because we would have been Silverstone, of how this is going to play out. It's still very much unknown. You think Hungary is usually the 10th, 11th race on the calendar, so it's really weird to speak about it when it's only the 3rd. We would have gone to tracks like, Bahrain, which require a little bit more downforce, especially in that middle sector. Australia requires that bit more. It's got some tight sections. I know it's quite flat out. China again has a lot of, high downforce areas. And there we are, we're just flung into Hungary, and it's it's certainly hard to sort of just wrap your head around what's going to happen. So guys, that's all from me. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you're wondering where the review for the Styrian Grand Prix is, that is on my blog. So the way this works is that the preview will be on the YouTube channel and the review will be on my blog. I've been doing sort of the reviews on my blog for since the start of last season. This is an easier way to do it, but I'll definitely leave the link to my Styrian Grand Prix review down in the description if you want to give that a read. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you are new here, make sure to subscribe, and also make sure to follow my blog, because I'm posting quite regular content on there at the moment, especially with all this sport sort of coming back. There's so much more to talk about, and it is, it makes a change from the month of March and most of April, where I had absolutely nothing to talk about. So that's all from me. Thank you guys so much for watching yet again. My name is Lewis.